Let's do it. Let's do it. I'm going to do the introduction and we're going to get it done. Welcome, everyone, to the big broadcast. This is going to be episode 27. I'm here with a special guest, Mr. Ian Porter. This is going to be the football preview. Now, I wanted to make it specifically fantasy football because you know me, I love sports, especially my ball. But we really want to focus on fantasy football because we have a draft tonight. And also, I'm talking to a pro right here. I'm going to let Ian introduce himself, man, and let him know the people. Let him know who you are, man. Let him know who you are, fam.
Well, let me tell you, it was a real pleasure meeting. I first met him about 3 years ago. He's a good, close friend of my daughter. I would have to consider him almost like family. And we bonded immediately over our love of football. We met at like a restaurant where, chatter was cheap, and we quickly found each other right across from the table, and we like immediately went into ESPN commentator mode, both of us. So it's been an ongoing thing since. Mad respect. So I'm glad to be here. Now, so clarify though, right? Because your introduction indicated that it seemed like you wanted to talk more like on a real football basis versus fantasy. So I'm kind of prepared for both, but let me know what your emphasis wants to be.
Yeah, no, here's the thing. When me and Ian talk and chop it up, it's like we just go all in. It's like it's free flowing.
Nobody's wasting time here.
Yeah, I mean, but I wanted to focus a little bit on fantasy football at first, and then we can lean into more regular real ball because the season starts on Thursday. All right.
Yeah.
So it's real close. On my podcast, I usually cover other topics, current events, but I wanted to focus a little bit on fantasy football and then overall football. Then we can transition a little bit into the grown man advice, man. And you know what? I consider Ian almost like a big bro, older, uncle who's giving me a lot of game and giving me a lot of advice, right. And I appreciate that from him. But here's what I'm saying, man. Let's start off with this fantasy football season, man. Tell me, my guy, tell me, what has you excited? Which players are you looking at? Like, what are you thinking? And we're talking about PPR leagues, by the way, points per reception. Okay. So I'll say this, Ian, you have extensive experience in fantasy. How have things evolved? What do you think about this year? Give me your thoughts. Give me your points of view.
Well, I hate to bring a downer on you immediately, but I actually have just wrapped up like a almost 15-year experience in my main like double quarterback IDP, like like Mondo, everything you could imagine in fantasy football league. Nice. With some close buds after a lot of years. So actually, I'm having a bit of a letdown summer this way. I haven't really scoured the fantasy football prospects like I may have in the past. But what I'm going to do here is rely on some tried and true advice. And that is basically some of your studs from last year, I guarantee you are going to do the same thing for you again this year. I know trades have definitely shaken up the league. I've seen some of that. But some tried and true advice as far as fantasy is concerned is, because most of us, let's be real, most of us are in like 10 to 12 team leagues.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Yeah. So, you're going to get a chance to, scope out the guys who have really done well for you in the past and do so again this year because it's really quite rare. I was like looking at the numbers, and honestly, the number of rookies that really impact the league, especially on a fantasy level, are very few and far between if you really look at the numbers. So all those guys that have served you well over the last 2 or 3 years, I know this is a bit of a cop-out, but some of those guys that have really served you well over the last 2-3 years, like keep looking at them. Some of their offensive situations have changed. Their coaches have changed. So, some guys are looking a lot worse than they were last year. What's his name? Metcalf in Seattle is being drafted like down in the 30s. What's going on there? Are you kidding me?
I'm like, man, Metcalf is nice, but also because he doesn't have Russell Wilson this year, so he's getting
but Buddy still knows how to throw a spiral, right?
Facts.
right? He's got physical talent that is like, so he's like, a great value if nobody's looking at it, right? There's a guy
Wow.
right there who I think is going to do very well this year. I mean, his year, but last year was his sort of like, come back to the mean year.
Yeah, you know who I'm looking really a player I think is going to do really well, and I think you might relate to this. Najee Harris, man. Najee Harris, a lot of upside with him because they're going to have either Steelers are going to have either Mitch Trubisky or Kenny Pickett throwing the ball.
Right?
And if you really think about it, they're not that proven. You know what I mean?
No.
Like, so at that point, your most reliable offensive guy, it has to be Najee Harris. You know what I mean?
Well,
So a
there
lot of value.
There are a couple of teams that also fit into that category. Look at Seattle this year after having lost Russell Wilson.
Yes.
Okay. So now you're looking at like, okay, and what's his name? Carson, I think, retired.
Yes, they're
So
running back.
who's finally on tap to possibly achieve their potential as, if not a bell cow back, at least 200 plus carries with his 4+ yards per carry average is Rashad Penny.
Yes,
right?
Penny. Yes.
How many times has that guy disappointed me in anticipation, right? Over the last 3 years? I think that guy's gonna finally come into his own.
High value guys. I think personally, from what I've been seeing around, I did my research. A lot of people are gonna go with Jonathan Taylor, running back for the Colts. He's projected number 1, and then McCaffrey. You know how I think about McCaffrey, bro.
Yeah,
Don't get me started.
These are high risk guys, though, because I mean, to get them, you've got to be like number 1 and number 2. It's interesting that you mentioned Najee Harris because total stud running back, right?
Yeah.
And last time, Roethlisberger threw, I think, 600 times last year. Like that's a big number, right? So we know that's not going to happen this year. So somebody has to like pick up those, those other plays, right? And let's assume they have lots of them. Even at 500 plays this year, Harris is looking at a big uptick in carries, and he proved himself last year as having reasonably capable hands and definitely a stud to the line. And Pittsburgh's going to keep them in a lot of games with their defense.
Yes.
Right. So he's going to get opportunities. So, like I think you mentioned, you've got game manager and Trubisky. I think Pickett actually might surprise some people. I think Pittsburgh, I'm a homer. Let's full transparency.
I gotta warn everybody. This is a Pittsburgh Steelers fan. We're this close to beefing. I'm a Ravens fan.
Right. Like since Super Bowl 14, I think was the first one I watched.
Wow,
right. Against Los Angeles. Right. So epic year, at the end of a dynasty type of thing. So I actually lived through the early 80s, post Terry Bradshaw, where I cheered from there every year, had absolutely lousy quarterbacks. So I'm preparing myself for a year like that, actually, to be very honest with you. Something circa 1982.
Well, you know what? This is a perfect transition from the fantasy football talk because I look at fantasy football for fun. I'm doing 2 leagues right now just for fun, no money. Just having fun with it, Yeah. Tonight, we're drafting tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern. It's going to be amazing.
You should see the mock I came up with. It's very interesting.
Oh, you have a nice mock? You have a nice mock?
Surprising, actually.
Oh, shit.
Anyways, we'll see what happens.
I'm excited, man. You know what I mean? But that's a smooth transition you're saying because you're a big fan of the Steelers. Been watching ball for a long time, for
so many years.
14. I don't want to start this off by saying who are our favorites. Let's start off with sleepers. You know what I mean? Which teams are sleepers in your eyes? For me, a big sleeper team is the Philadelphia Eagles, man. Oh, I'm telling y'all, they're building something over there, man. I'm telling y'all, like, people need to pay attention. If Jalen Hurts actually improves from last year, if the coach is actually good and he actually can manage things, or if Jalen Hurts is even just a game manager, that's fine. Their receivers are nice. Their running backs are nice. Their defense is nice. A lot of upside with the Eagles, my man. So that's a sleeper team in my eyes. Do you have a sleeper in your point of view? What do you think?
God, dude, this is like being right back at that restaurant in Ottawa at Jasmine's graduation, right? No. I actually, like, fantasy story, just to dip back in. I actually picked up Jalen Hurts in desperation, not last year, but the year before. So I have benefited like probably from like 100% of Jalen Hurts' productive games in fantasy football. So I'm extremely biased towards Philadelphia in that regard. So my level of concurrence is it's almost anticlimactic because I feel like you've just like absolutely grabbed it. It wasn't my number one sleeper or my only sleeper, but that was the one I really had going, because the thing is that they've only improved their offensive line since then. Yes, and their defense was no joke last year. And they're, you know, I hate to say this like it's a thing, but like they're running back by committee, which is like, you know, 90% of NFL teams now, is nothing to be joked with between Gainwell, Boston Scott, and Miles Sanders. I mean, between the three of them, this guy, I bet you any money, there's 1,500 yards.
And on top of that, you have Jalen Hurts, who can also run out of the pocket.
Right, and Hurts can run. I mean, the guy's a fantasy stud. He saved my fucking season. The year I went undefeated in that, you know, that 2-quarterback league I was telling you about, where quarterbacks were an absolute premium. I grabbed him off the, you know, the fantasy, you know, the wire, and he's been, you know, he's been nothing but paying stipends since. I kept him. He was my keeper last year.
I'm telling you, you got to work that waiver wire, fam, because I didn't even expect Jalen Hurts to be that nice in fantasy, but apparently, because he gets a lot of yards
in a 2 QB league, dude, where it's like 12 or was it 12 teams and everybody has a third QB. It's like you have to be scouring the wire for players sometimes. So not every league's like that, right? But most are like that for like wide receivers and running backs and tight ends and stuff. So it's the same thing. You got to be watching new talent all the time. So let that be said. But no, I really believe in Philly because they not only had a good defense to start with, they increased their offensive line talent. They improved both sides of the ball, and they have Jalen Hurts. And this time, like, he's got an arm, right? Like, the guy's more than a pair of legs. Like, the guy can throw downfield. And now he's got A.J. Brown, one of the most efficient wide receivers, right? The only real stud coming out of, like, Tennessee that Tannehill had to throw to, right? A.J. Brown saved his fat a few times out of the fire, right? So now he's got that type of talent on top of whatever else he was throwing to last year. I mean, he throws a lot over the slot. He's got good tight end play as well. So I absolutely expect great things out of Philly. I almost hate calling them a sleeper, but they kind of are, you know, given how the chaos of the NFC East every year.
It's crazy, man. The chaos of the NFC is, man, you have the freaking Cowboys. Everybody's riding on them. They're gonna be the Cowboys. You have the Commanders now. Come on, man.
Right?
You have what's that other Giants? Like, they're so irrelevant. I forgot to name them.
Although watch out for Saquon Barkley, though. He's looking at a big backup, you know, big rebound year this year. Like, he may do things for them, but even still, the Giants are going nowhere, right?
They're going nowhere fast, man. Until they fix that O-line, there's nothing's gonna happen.
Yeah. Nothing happens without the lines, man. Nothing happens without the lines.
And you know what? Another sleeper team. I don't even know if you can even call this team a sleeper. But I'm gonna say this because I might be a little biased. The Denver Broncos. Okay? I'm telling you, the Denver Broncos. I don't even know if I can call them a sleeper because they have Russ. And for me, I look at it like this, man. If you have a very good quarterback, right, your team can go from not in the drafting at the top of the first round. To in the playoffs, either a wild card or a contender. We saw this happen before in Denver when they brought Peyton Manning in, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So for me, I'm calling them a sleeper because that division, the AFC West, is insane.
Well,
so I'm calling them a sleeper because I don't see people seeing them go far, but I can see them go
is far. What makes them a sleeper, in my opinion, from my quick survey of what's happening this fall was, I mean, that thing surprised the hell out of me. I don't know if anybody ever That good. That's good sports, but it's a really good podcast, very funny, and the guy's a complete Denver homer. So he
Yes.
broke that story like maybe a month ago, and I was like going, "What the hell?" I did
You
not
didn't see it
realize that.
coming? I saw it coming, man.
I
A
missed the
little bit.
headline, yeah. But anyways, yeah. So Russell Wilson, as a Denver QB, very much reminds me of the Peyton Manning thing a few years back, because that kid is nowhere near spent. Are you kidding me? That guy has so many years left to play. He had a bad year running last year, but I think they'll get over that. And Denver absolutely has the tools on the offensive line to help. The only thing that's been missing from Denver for so long has been a competent quarterback. So clearly they're addressing that. And Judy's back. Right? Cortland Sutherland. Some people are saying he's going to be the guy, but I think Judy will surpass him, right? They've got Melvin Gordon, Mr. Slippery in the backfield. I mean, Russell loves a guy a running back who can catch the ball from 5 yards out. I mean, come on, man. All the tools. They lost Von Miller, but, they've got other guys. Yeah, I just cannot see Denver not being competitive. But that being said, that division is so insane. Like I would rather give up a mortgage payment to try to predict that division. Like that division is historically it's been that way, but especially this year, it is such an insane wild card. Any one of the four could actually win. I think that Denver's going to be disappointed. I imagine that Mahomes is going to be on a bit of a revenge tour this year. Not to even mention, Lamar Jackson as well. I mean, I think both of those guys. He lost Tyreek Hill in Kansas City, but he gained other guys as well too. It gives him a more diverse set of tools. I really think that Russell Wilson is going to have competition in that division. And let's not even get started about the Chargers, for Christ's sake. I mean, this
is before we even talk about the Raiders.
A Bear looks like a generational talent. They got Mike Williams. There's so much going on there, right? So, to try to predict what's going to happen in the NFC West is just insanity. Define.
And you know what? For me, I just love ball, man. It's just gonna be fun to watch those games, man. And if you get yourself in Ottawa, we're having some drinks and watching the game. It's not even a date. You know what I mean?
Hopefully we'll get an AFC West game, because every one of them is gonna be fireworks this year, in my opinion.
Oh yes, there's gonna be very little defense, a ton of points. That's what I predict for every single game for AFC West teams, bro. But we talked about the sleepers, right? But now we got to talk about the favorites. Now, when we talk about the favorites, of course, there's always going to be those teams that are, almost always going to be in it, right? But I want to get it from you. Which team do you have a really good feeling about at least making the Super Bowl? I'm not going to get your Super Bowl prediction yet. Your winner yet, but I want to get which two teams do you think they can make a run? They can go all the way,
Well, the obvious choice, everyone's talking about them, and I'm actually really remiss to talk about them, being from Toronto, right? Having grown up with the Bills, but I'm sorry, the Bills look absolutely stacked this year, and they look like a team that's should make a run. And I absolutely believe that to be true. And I kind of feel that way too. Green Bay has an incredible defense, but they're challenged that way. But I kind of think that the Vikings will also make more noise this year than people imagine. Right? Yeah.
Okay.
The Bucs were at a Super Bowl. They almost made one last year. Brady's 45. A lot of people expect him to, just automatically it's going to be a storybook narrative this year and all that type of thing. But let me call it first here. I hate to be that guy. Knowing me, knowing my luck, he'll actually turn around and prove me 100% wrong. But I actually think that Brady's looking at an injury this year somewhere along the line. I don't know what point or whatever. No one's going to be looking for it, because instead they're all looking for that fantasy narrative where, it's last year, he's going to win the Super Bowl, it's, blah, blah, blah. No, but I think his zenith with Tampa Bay passed.
You know what? I agree with you. I'm not, obviously we don't wish injuries on nobody, right? We
No, of
don't wish
course,
that on
never, never,
anybody.
never.
But
I hope he
the
proves me
only,
wrong.
the only reason Drew Brees retired or even Peyton Manning retired is because they got too injured. If they were still healthy, able-bodied, they would still be playing to this day.
Yeah.
And the thing about Brady, I think Brady has that same mentality too. The only
But he's
way
been
he's gonna,
extremely successful in keeping himself healthy. So, I
yes,
mean,
he
you have
has.
to but he is 45, right?
He
Neither of
is.
those guys made 45.
That's
He's
what I'm
almost
saying.
bionic at this point,
I think
apparently.
I think you know what? Obviously, we know how this goes. This is the NFL. They're gonna rig the game for guys like him. They're gonna rig the game for quarterbacks. But I see the only way Brady will ever retire. It's gonna sound fucked
Freak.
up.
He'll
He has
twist
to
his
get.
toe.
Yeah, you'd have to like literally be carted. I don't wish this on it. He'd have to be carted off the field to retire. You know what I mean?
Right. Oh,
I
yeah.
don't think he has no intentions of ever stopping to play football. But the thing is, we have to
I
be
think he
honest.
wants
The
to play to
Bucks.
50 at least. I think he wants to play to
You think he
50.
wants to go that far? Oh shit.
I really do. Yeah. It's
Okay.
in his own mind, I believe. Yeah, I think so, because I believe that he literally, I mean, he's invested into this, exercise and nutrition program. He brought on a
Right.
personal trainer, all that type of, really intense stuff. I really do believe he thinks he can like really challenge, the age records, not just in the
You know
league,
what?
but generationally in
I,
society. I mean, I really
oh,
believe I think he's working towards that. I think he has the ego for it, for sure.
I'll say this. I'll say this.
It's what made him a winner.
It's that mentality to never quit mentality. Also the effort to put in, like you said, the work in his workouts,
Right? I will
his
never
dedication to
short him on
fitness.
that.
I will never disrespect him on that. But
Yeah.
man, I can't even. I don't even see the Bucks making the playoffs, man. You have the Saints there. Jameis just needs to throw less interceptions. They're in. And then think about it like this. Then you have some teams. You think the NFC West. You have San Fran is definitely gonna make it. The Rams are definitely gonna make it. The Cardinals might come in as a wild card. The Tampa Bay Bucks are not that nice anymore. Their
No,
windows,
they're
I think
not.
their window's closed, man. And
Yeah.
Brady's basically going to be playing on a team that's going to be fighting to make a wild card, bro. And for me, I think there's two ways I see Brady coming out. And you said something correct, that it's probably an injury, because that'll definitely have him out. Or he'll, once he realizes the Bucks are not going to do anything, he'll probably retire a second time, because he was trying to retire and go to Miami. Wasn't that the story? I heard a narrative that he retired and then unretired. And then all of a sudden, when he unretires, Bruce Arians is now in the front office. You have a new coach. Is he like running the team or some shit?
Pretty much, yeah. No, because the guy, that's been his brand. It's like he's got some kind of magic. He's like a coach on the field. He's incredibly durable, and for the most part, I mean, I hate to say it, I really enjoyed cheering against him as a villain, as a Steelers fan. But there comes a point after literally 20 years, where I'm used to QBs like lasting 12, 13 years, where you kind of just have to give it up to the guy.
Yes,
right?
I definitely give it up to him. Yeah.
When I was in my early 30s, I looked at him as like, the young buck coming up. Oh, fuck off, whatever. Now he's my contemporary. Like, fuck off. How does that happen, right? The proportionality of age as you go on, right? Like now he's one of my peers.
The crazy thing about him is, I'm always going to be biased. I'm a Ravens fan. I always thought Peyton Manning was better. I still think Aaron Rodgers is better, purely from a quarterback standpoint in the position. Yeah. But these past few years, I've been more of a Brady fan, because I'm like, wow, to be able to do that,
to keep doing it
at a high level and not be like a scrub. Like last season, you could argue that he could have got the MVP. You know what I mean? Like he threw for 5,000 yards, about 30-something touchdowns. Insane. You know what I mean? At 45 freaking years old. Now, of course,
as a fantasy player,
wow,
I passed on him. As a fantasy player, I took Tannehill as my second quarterback. I think I had an opportunity to have Brady at one, either No, I kept Jalen Hurts. So yeah, I had a chance to have Brady as my second guy, and I passed on him, like thinking that I'll get somebody else of higher value, and he's too highly ranked, et cetera. And I might have had a different season.
I will say this, man. In terms of my pick for the Super Bowl, as you said, I see the Bills making it. Now, obviously, I'm biased. I want my Baltimore Ravens to make it. But with this Lamar contract situation, I hope they pay him ASAP so they have our best player on the field. But if I'm being completely objective, the Bills should make it. The Bills are looking crazy. And for the NFC side, I won't go necessarily Minnesota because that's kind of risky. I don't know about Kirk Cousins. I don't know how he's going to play.
That Green Bay defense is going to be hard. Kirk Cousins, because think about this is how I break it down. Sorry, I hate to interject, but I thought of this. I thought of this earlier today. Right? If you try to imagine it, right, it's that game where it's like Green Bay's moved up 34-31. It's in the last minute 47 type of thing, and now it's on Kirk Cousins to dethrone Aaron Rodgers. Can he get into that mental space to drive down the field and put the nail in Green Bay's coffin, like in Green Bay or even in Minnesota, right? Yep. Could he summon that mental strength, Kirk Cousins, right? Is he going to have that, you like that final drive, right?
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I've seen him do a lot of cool things, but I don't think he's built like that. And Aaron Rodgers definitely fucking is. And they have that D. Right. So
I got to push back a little bit because Aaron Rodgers is not like that. He always flops in the play. You remember last playoffs when he was playing the 49ers? This man threw for like 10 yards and like their team got destroyed by Jimmy G, bruh. Jimmy.
Right. Okay. Fair enough.
G.
Fair enough. Maybe he's not what he once was even 5 years ago or whatever, but I've just seen the guy do so many tricks over the years. Right.
I think maybe something psychologically gets in his head in the playoffs because in the regular season, he's a monster. And I think that actually goes to our next conversation. By the way, for the NFC, I think it's a little bit wide open. I can see the Rams making it.
Me too.
I can see Green Bay making it. And sounds crazy. If Jameis plays okay, I can even see the Saints making a run.
I was about to say, don't forget the Saints, right? Because now you're talking about coaching, experience, and a fantastic defense.
Yes.
But the wild card for New Orleans, unfortunately, is QB, right? Because if Winston fails and they go away from Kamara to what's his name, Trayvon, whoever that guy is that runs the wishbone. I mean, he's fantastic at it. I love the wishbone. But I've had Kamara on my team for the last 3 or 4 years. So every time that guy comes in at QB, so it becomes a totally different team when you don't have a guy who can effectively pass for at least 4,000 yards.
And that's the thing. It's even the interceptions, right? Because you don't want Jameis throwing picks, man, because then
he can be a monster, right? Sometimes he's a little it's easy to get into his head.
It's a mental game as well, and that's the thing about football. Yeah. It's a mental game. But other than our Super Bowl picks, what do you have in mind in terms of MVP, right? Because that's a very interesting conversation. Do you see it? Do you see a player going above and beyond and going crazy this year, or do you see the same usual players who are always in that MVP conversation? Because people are saying there's a chance that Rodgers might get a third MVP. Because he's working with less talent in terms of his, Devontae's gone, Valdez-Scantling is gone to the Chiefs, and now he has his best receivers now, Alan Lazard and a bunch of rookies.
Right.
So, what's your point of view? Do you think maybe
there's no way I see that. I actually see Rodgers having a better, like I just said, a better playoff season. But as far as the regular season and playoffs go and whatnot, no, I think he's going to be restrained a little bit as a quarterback. And I believe that their backfield running, their running backs between A.J. Dillon and Jones. I think they're going to rely on them heavily in the absence of Devontae Adams. But guaranteed somebody will step up on the flanks, on the wide receiver ends. But I absolutely believe that both Dillon and Jones are probably going to be viable as fantasy quarterback running backs this year.
Absolutely, absolutely. I can see them as RB
So
one.
I don't see Rodgers being super electric this year. Um,
Mm-hmm.
So as far as I'm actually going to give you a guy out of left field as an
Okay,
MVP.
go
I'm
ahead.
going
Go
to
ahead.
give you a whole different concept, and I'll explain the reasons why.
Mhm.
TJ Watt, a defensive MVP, as MVP for
Oh,
the fucking league. Pardon my language. I'm
oh,
not sure if
shit.
we're
Whoa.
allowed to swear on this
Yeah,
podcast,
we
but
can swear, man. Fuck
I
shit, all
just
that.
did. But TJ Watt, I've
Yeah.
had him as one of my rare fantasy, defensive players selected in the first 5 rounds. And again, we're talking about a
Ooh.
2 QB league,
Okay.
because this guy scores points in fantasy, almost like a wide receiver, like 15, 20 points a game if he's on point.
He
So
matched
anyway,
Strahan's record last year.
right?
He matched the
My
record.
point, I
Insane.
think he had 15 or 16 sacks last year, right? I'm not saying he's going to break, 23, but I believe that guy's capable of 20 sacks in a year where the defense finds itself on the field a lot. And I think he'll be spectacular in doing it. And I think he'll probably get at least a couple of touchdowns. So he
Oh,
will emulate his brother in the flair with which he accomplishes his goals this season. And
okay.
yeah, I think he will lead that defense in a way that will make him look like an MVP. Now
That is
that's
a
just to
fire
make your
take.
right. That's just to make your podcast sound interesting, right? And I absolutely believe it is possible.
It's
But
possible.
beyond him, if I was to choose an offensive player, I bet you any money's going to be Jalen Hurts.
Wow.
Again with my
Fire
bias, right?
takes. I
Yo,
like
dude,
it.
I believe Jalen Hurts is capable of a lot of really great things.
You know what? I won't even hate on that, because if you look at it last year, the best player on the Dallas Cowboys was Micah Parsons, right? Micah Parsons.
Mm-hmm.
And he, I believe, should have gotten some MVP votes because he changed that defense. The
How
best
many
player on the
times did these
Rams.
guys change the game?
Yeah, the best player on the Rams was not even Stafford. It was Cooper
Right?
Kupp. And it's no,
Right?
actually, you could even say Aaron Donald. The best player on the
I was
Steelers.
about to say,
Yeah,
Aaron Donald is your next level kind of guy.
he's
Like,
the
don't
he's
tell
yeah
me, especially in the Super Bowl,
in the
Aaron
Super
Donald
Bowl.
made
Yep.
the difference,
He made the
right?
play to stop that drive that the Bengals were about to. Burrow was
Like,
going to score a touchdown that drive,
right?
unless Aaron Donald stopped him. And TJ Watt has that type of
Like,
game impact to change the last drive in the game, and even to put fear in the other offense's head, because he's coming at a speed. So for me, the only thing I have against that pick is not anything. It's a good choice. It's just that you don't see defensive players are not as valued in this league as
nah,
much, and they're not even highlighted. If this
no,
was the 80s, the 90s, Lawrence Taylor days, where
right,
Lawrence
right.
Taylor won MVP.
Well, people talked about him more.
Yes, because they were
Strahan,
highlighted, right? Strahan. Now, if TJ Watt does something insane, like go for 24 sacks, you have to give it to him. If and that's possible. I'm not joking. This is 17 games in a season, but I can see personally in terms of quarterbacks, I'm really high on Russell Wilson and also Derek Carr, by the way, because I see those teams being up on top of their conferences, and the way that they've done MVP these days, it's usually the first or second seed team in each conference. Like Mahomes is won
right,
MVP because he won for 50 touchdown, number one team in the AFC. Lamar won MVP because number one team in the AFC. Crazy
right,
numbers. Aaron Rodgers, last 2 years, he's been the Green Bay Packers have been the number one team basically in the NFC, so they won. But if they were being objective, these defensive players and even some of these receivers, like look at what Cooper Kupp did for the Rams. Look at, what I'm saying, look at what Derrick Henry's been doing for the Titans. Like, I want the MVP voters, the writers who vote on it, to be a little more objective and look at other guys. They are
a
so
little
many
less
times.
traditional.
Yes, be less traditional out
Yeah,
here. But
yeah. Well,
let
and
me know.
that's
Yeah, go
that's
ahead.
what I did.
Yeah,
So maybe that's a little wishful thinking on my part when I throw that out there, because as a guy who
still a good
has
take though.
played in a guy who's been in an IDP league for like years and years. I have learned the value of certain players. And let me tell you, you know, your Ray Lewis kind of middle linebacker, you know, with Javon Samuels, you know, any of these kind of guys who are going to rack up regularly anywhere between 15 and 20 tackles a game, plus the occasional sack, forced fumble, you know, whatever these spectacular middle linebackers do. Guys like that, I mean, in fantasy, like I found out that like these guys are like your RB1s, even like some quarterbacks, wide receiver ones. They get like between 15 and 20 points a game, right? Shit. So, you know, and if you get, I found out that if you get a guy like TJ Watt, if you, or JJ was the guy, he was my first prototype that way. I realized, and this is one of the keys. We were talking about fantasy earlier. Yes. It's funny we segue back here now. I'm going to segue back right now. You talk about grown man advice, like in fantasy, right?
Yes.
Separation at positions like that, right? Not only make you look like an MVP in real football, they can help you win your fantasy football league. If you're like in IDP, right? You got to like figure out which players get points, right? All kinds of cornerbacks, right? They look super hot. They're complete shutdown quarterbacks, but because they're so shut down, they don't get any tackles. So instead, you want the middle of the road guy who's getting mad tackles, who's getting like targeted all fucking day long, but he's somehow holding on. You see what I mean? Right? So, so there are certain players that can give you advantage in fantasy. Tight end is another one where there's like a steep drop off after about 3 players, right?
Facts.
Right? You watched me the first year we ever played together, right? You saw what Travis Kelce can do, right? When everybody else is failing, right? Wow. So, I mean, there's certain players that, like, to me, they're absolute MVPs, and they actually get flushed out in fantasy.
Interesting. I will say this. Unfortunately, Zoom has like a 40-minute limit.
Okay, so we're wrapping up.
Yeah, we're going to wrap up slightly. I'm going to see if I can edit out some other things, but thank you so much for your advice, Ian. Appreciate you for coming through. This has been the Big Broadcast with Big Stuff with Big Baby JL and Ian Porter. Appreciate
all right,
you,
one love. Thank you for having me, and good luck.
Appreciate you.
I'm gonna see you in the pit.
Let's go.
All right, bye now.
Appreciate you, my man.